Hello there, So Editor is not ready for use. Please check back a bit later. Oh, neat. Development of the Osu laser editor has finally reached a point where it actually looks like an editor. And well, that's about it honestly. In its current state, the laser editor is a replica of gameplay with timeline navigation. You can pause, play, and skip around to glitch out approach circles all you want. Weirdly enough, you can also play a map through the editor. Objects are clickable with this pointer cursor, which is even functional while a map is paused. These new, very familiar buttons, however, don't have a purpose yet. You can click them, but that's it. Same goes for the non-moving timeline up top. So what we've got ourselves here for practical purposes is basically just a teaser. It's obviously not meant to be used yet, but it's cool to see that progress, albeit slow, is being made. And sure, maybe it doesn't do anything, but I appreciate just having an editor for view-only reasons too. Maps were only visible in actual gameplay before, which was majorly inconvenient, so these new options of scrolling around and pausing have made looking at maps in laser a lot more comfortable to me. As soon as I noticed this update, I messed around in the editor for an embarrassing amount of time, getting myself more familiar with laser, or the future of Osu. Most of what I observed was completely useless, of course, like there's this little white line that appears at the top and bottom of the screen of equal width to nearby approach circles. Woohoo. But I also noticed a few things that got me thinking about how maps in laser differ from maps in the stable build of Osu, and what of those differences may still exist by the time laser replaces the stable build. Let me explain. What first put me on that line of thought was this map of mine. I was just looking through it in the new editor, as I'd been doing for a few other maps, and I noticed I'm a hypocrite. Something I adamantly promote is mapping with stacks enabled in the editor. Not doing so can lead to unintended object placements, especially when it comes to stuff like this. The circle prioritizes stacking on the slider head and ignores the slider tail, making for this weirdly offset object. Forgive me, Lord, for I have committed the gravest sin of all. I went back to the original Osu to fix this and saw... oh. Okay, apparently I hadn't messed up. In the stable build, my stack is actually correct. I assumed stack leniency must have been broken in laser then, so I tried out some other maps and figured out that, no, stack leniency isn't messed up. Difficulty settings are. Stack leniency really should be one of these, but whatever. Apparently right now, every map is AR9 in laser, which is why this map had this stacking error. The original was AR8, which stacks properly, while AR9 doesn't. That's not the only setting that's off though. Circle size looks generally okay, but upon closer inspection is clearly wrong. It seems that decimal values are currently unsupported in laser, so values are truncated, like CS 4.1 through 4.9 turns into CS4, 5.1 to 5.9 into 5, etc. I imagine the same could be said about OD and HP, though decimal values have a minor impact for those settings anyway. These differences between stable and laser, along with more minor issues like double reverses not showing up in poor treatment of spinner new combos, are definitely going to be aligned further along in development. I can just about guarantee it. What about aspects of mapping that are completely outdated though? While checking through some older maps, it became clear that some previously automated and now deprecated features don't actually function in laser. If you didn't already know, maps are stored as text in files with .osu extensions. At the top of each of these files is a version number referencing how the .osu file is formatted to go along with development changes. Changes usually being new additions like the introduction of green lines and extra hit sounding opportunities. The most up-to-date version is numbered 14, while if you went back in time, the number would get smaller and eventually reach 1. And as you already know, old versions are still perfectly compatible with newer builds of Osu. If they weren't, old maps would be unplayable. Stacks have always been around, but the stack leniency function we were just talking about wasn't added until file format v5. Before that, every map was automatically the equivalent of stack leniency 7, which is the default today. Because there's no actual stack leniency value in the file though, I think laser defaults to 0 rather than 7. One of Osu's oldest ranked maps, Cross Time, is full of stacks in the stable build, making it practically unreadable to me. In laser though, without visibly offset stacks in AR9, it's actually a playable map with a rhythm choice that doesn't make me want to delete it from my library, unlike the majority of 2007 maps. So yeah, comparisons, there's a difference. Camel Sliders in laser face a similar problem. Between 2007 and 2010, there were various selectable slider curve types which dictated how anchors would affect a slider shape. Linear and Bezier are still available in the modern editor through alternate means, but Camel Sliders are scientifically proven more gross than tapeworms, so they were rendered obsolete around file format 9 or so. In stable you can still play them, but laser seems to just not support these at all. I played through a map I made in the 2010 editor with Camel Sliders and the difference was plainly obvious. Camel Sliders are converted to Bezier sliders. What weirds me out is how rhythm stays intact though. This is a huge Camel slider on some old 2007 map. When converted to Bezier, this is what happens. As you can see, it gets shorter. That's what happens when you change the slider in the editor. If the slider is changed from Camel to Bezier directly in the map file though, it maintains the same rhythm and extends in a straight line from the last point. Lazer is essentially a combination of both of those. It stays held for the same length as the original slider, despite being visually shorter, and this is especially broken on Camel reversing sliders. So why does this happen? Why are they different? The point of Lazer that's been said time and time again is to rewrite Osu to remove all the old code that's been part of the game since the beginning. It's been holding development back for too long. That code though is why backwards compatibility is so easy between file formats. Like if I take a file format v14 map and stick it in the 2013 Osu client, which only supports v12, it almost works fine. Yes, it does say processing bitmaps headers failed, this map is likely corrupt, but as long as I change the decimal difficulty settings to whole number values, it works fine. Going back to the 2012 client, which supports v11, is completely unchanged, works just as well as before. Moving on to 2011 in file format v9 does change things though. Sliders turn into camels and hit sounds don't function. Even though the file format version doesn't know what types of sliders these are or how hit sounds work though, it still loads the map and is perfectly playable, which I find pretty impressive. 2010 with the V7 is surprisingly the same, though skipping back to V5 in 2008 is where things start to really break. All green lines here turned into red lines because the game hadn't yet supported inherited timing points, and trying to modify them with the F6 timing panel window results in the game crashing with this weird error. However, even this could be fixed. I copied and pasted red timing point information into each green line in the .osu, and was actually able to modify slider speeds appropriately through BPM changes. So a 2017 map is playable in the 2008 editor. The 2007 client with file format v3 is where the map doesn't actually load. But really, that took way longer than it should have. Late 2007 was when the game was made, and my new map only breaking that now is crazy. Just to see how far I could take it though, I tried simplifying my .osu file a bit more to see if I could get something out of it, and after removing a few sections, it actually launched. Nothing more though. Playing it is impossible because, yeah, I don't really know what's going on. All the sliders are messed up and there's like this thing in the top left, whatever. Anyway, we're getting off topic. Lazer's map files will no longer use the same base code that allows modern maps to be run in super old clients, which is why it's got some problems with stuff like stack leniency and Camel sliders. Instead, Lazer will handle map data in a new, more effective way, freeing it from the limitations of the old Osu. If I had to guess though, those minor differences will likely be fixed for compatibility of all ranked maps in Lazer. Removing old maps from play because they use outdated design kinda goes against the philosophy upheld for the last 10 years, which has kept these prehistoric maps ranked. The differences between stable and Lazer that I think may not be fixed, however, are the ones that were probably never intended to exist in the first place, yet have found a home for themselves in countless people's map libraries. The stuff that intentionally breaks the game. What comes to mind here other than Aspire? The mapping contest focused on rule-breaking creativity. The first round's entries weren't especially over the top, so nothing about them differed between Lazer and Stable, but Monstrata's entry in the second round had a few issues. First thing is subtle, star rating here is slightly different from the original. Not unexpected though, considering the map was originally 8 stars before tweaking star rating calculation was made to compensate. The highlight of this map is a slider animation, but that works perfectly fine here. Weirdly though, the slow slider before the chorus is calculated wrong somehow. Maybe it's something with BPM or slider velocity being interpreted incorrectly, but it just appears for way longer than it's intended to. Also, a super minor thing, borders of the screen are different in Lazer. They're just wider all around, which kind of ruins the effect of objects disappearing beyond the edge here. The third Aspire contest was where multiple people really tried to go overboard, so there's a few problems this time. On Professional Blox's entry, the highlight of this map is some slider distortion, a fancy glitch where sliders look similar to that broken map in the 2007 client, except here they're actually playable. In Lazer, that's boring. They're just circles practically, making the most outstanding aspect of this map the most worthless one. After looking around, I noticed this was different earlier in the year though, it was only worse. Fantastic. As for other entries, the currently loved second place winner by Ming doesn't even load. It gets stuck right away then can't be cancelled. I can only assume this is because some of its game-breaking features aren't accounted for in Lazer, though I can't be certain. I remember Mo's entry being pretty cool too, so I'm glad I managed to import, but just clicking on it in song select causes the game to crash. Another instance of an actual map being too much for Lazer, just in a different way I guess. Millie is infamous for his weird contest entries, and thankfully he's got a single map set uploaded of all of them, but unfortunately, Lazer doesn't support multiple MP3s in one map set. I mean, it makes sense. It's an exploit that goes against the idea of map sets. Sucks that there's quite a few loved maps using this setup though. They're kinda screwed. So lots of these game-breaking maps that work fine and stable don't function at all in Lazer, and I doubt they ever properly will. For these maps to work, devs would need to intentionally leave room for specific bugs and exploits in the lazer.osu file format. Counterproductive for sure, and because it only affects a select few maps, of which only a fraction have leaderboards, it's not worth it. Aspire maps and a few loved maps may be screwed whenever we make the full switch from stable to Lazer. But yeah, Lazer as it stands now has a fair number of differences when compared to the familiar build. Most will probably be realigned with further development, but I'm not so sure all of them will. And I likely wouldn't have noticed any of them without this new bare-bones Lazer editor. Can't wait until I can actually make a map in this, because even if it's more painful to use than the 2007 client, I'd still try it out. Just seems like fun, you know? Anyway, this has essentially been a Lazer editor progress update and thoughts that came out of it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.